think we are live. Let me just double check.
I see a little pop-up here.
There we are. Okay, I'm going to share it with my page and then we'll get started.
Great.
Okay. All right. Hi, good morning. I'm Lara Hawkeiser, founder of Flow and Grow Kids Yoga, and I'm here with my friend Jess Mougis, who created the Kids Yoga podcast. And we've known each other for more than 5 years, and I want to have her on to chat about her podcast and her parenting style and her brand of self-care, and have like a great time. So if anybody has questions as we go, I'll try to look back at the Facebook and see what pops up. In the meantime, go look at your favorite podcast listening device, whether it's Apple or Spotify, and look for the Kids Yoga podcast so you can follow her. And hi, Jessica, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. As we were saying before we started, I have started this thing where once a week my daughter gets a babysat at her grandparents' house by her babysitter and sleeps over. So I've created like a little morning ritual once a week where I get to exercise and be alone, and it's truly life-saving. And I was talking to you recently about just the lack of privacy and aloneness.
Yeah.
So, how is your pandemic parenting world going?
Well, first I have to say I am in my stepsister's empty apartment, which is why it's so quiet. So this isn't normal for me.
Miracle.
Yeah. Pandemic parenting, it's really intense. And yesterday I actually made the decision to not send my daughter to school. She's 4 years old. And I was planning on it this entire time. And then I kind of got the welcome packet from them and I was reading through and I was even signing everything. And I just had this like sinking feeling in my gut. And so we talked with my husband and we just decided that right now for our family and our situation that we're going to withdraw her from school. And so that's, I think, been the biggest thing on my mind right now, because that's a major decision. And then it makes me realize like this is extending really far, trying to care for my 4-year-old, my 1-year-old, and work, and my husband's working full time. So it's really challenging.
It's really a full-time job with no space, no privacy.
Mm-hmm.
And you're making the podcast as well. And I mean, how do you feel are there days where you just want to hide in a closet, or are you enjoying what's the mixture of emotions you're going through?
So it's definitely like, it's everything. Every day I want to hide in the closet for sure. And I hide in my kitchen. It's my only, I go in the kitchen, I sit on a stool and I drink a tea or whatever. And then mixed in are these moments where I go, oh my God, this never would have happened if we weren't in the situation. Like my son Ryan is 16 months old and he knows nothing else except my husband always being home and always being in the room. And they've just have this incredible relationship. So I see things like that daily where I get chills and I go, wow, this wouldn't have happened. So it's my friend called it the Corona coaster. So I'm like,
yeah, that's a great name for it.
Yeah. So it's kind of like goes in waves, and I try to just be present for it, and not where it gets hard is when I'm then like hard on myself on top of it, and then it becomes too much.
Yeah, I know you have very high standards. I'm like that myself. And there's just no way to meet your own standards with the demands of, my daughter, I just have one, she's 3.5. So it's, I've never done more dishes, more grocery shopping, constant laundry. I'm not sure if you can hear the hum of the laundry machine right now, but it's just become like a meditative background noise because we do never really leave. And it is very special being home with her and having both parents have more time with her. I am the one that works from home though. So it is, even if I'm being supported, it's like she's there, she's coming into my teacher training calls and people are very patient and sweet with her. But sometimes I'm just like, I'm trying to think, or I actually think I brush my hair maybe 1 minute per month at this point. So I brushed my eyebrows for the call. I was like, I got this.
I put on makeup. I was like, there's a reason to put on makeup. I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing. I realized I hadn't been clothing shopping for myself in so long. And I was with my sister over the weekend, and she's like, give the baby to our parents. And well, she's not a baby, but give Charlie to our parents. I'm taking you to the store. And I bought a shirt. I have a shirt. I have a pair of jeans. I actually learned my size. Like, it's been so long since I've been shopping that I didn't even know what my current size was. And so I think, how do we figure out, and then now that you're like, okay, I'm going to be home with both my kids, how do you expect to find moments, or what's your plan for self-preservation? Because of course we're giving and we're giving and we're giving. And that I've totally gone toddler tantrum on my family several times throughout the pandemic. I'm wondering, how are you planning or foreseeing yourself managing all that?
Well, the big thing right now is asking for help where I can get help. So for example, on my podcast, a lot goes into just keeping the social media feed going, and even posting about current episodes, all of that. So we have our family babysitter, Cordelia, and she's incredible. Not only is she a babysitter, but she is just a helper to me. So she's in Pennsylvania right now. So she's been doing these 1-hour Zoom calls with my daughter, like 3 or 4 days a week.
Oh, that's amazing.
I time it during my son's nap. So that's about an hour. Obviously, Emmy's still like, asking me for things. It's not like, but I get I feel like it's like a 75% break. So I have that. And that's working well because Cordelia is kind of personalizing what they're doing based on her interest in playing games. So she keeps it moving. And then the other thing is she's helping me now with my social media, as I started saying. So I'm like, hey, on Wednesdays, I always post this kind of post. Thursdays, I do this. Friday, I do this. Can you help me out with that? Can you create the graphics? I'll write the captions and all that, but can you create the audiograms? So I'm, in small ways getting help on the business side and with the children. And it's very hard now. There's no childcare. There was a babysitter I met through a friend who had moved out of the city. So we met like at the park with our masks on. She meets the kids. It's so bizarre. And we're both kind of like, oh, I'm not really comfortable like having you inside. She's like, I'm not comfortable either. So we said, okay, maybe we can meet at the park and you could watch.
Then it's weather dependent, and
I'm like,
somewhere with kids means then you're having to like get them ready to go to the park.
Exactly. It's a whole thing. And we have to meet at Central Park, which is a 20-minute walk for me. And for her, it's like a 45-minute walk.
40 minutes.
Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, maybe we could do that. And I could sit on a bench nearby and do work, so it's obviously none of this is the ideal working condition, but it's small things right now. And I'm trying to, it's never going to feel like enough, but I find even those tiny little steps are making a difference in how I feel. So.
Yeah, I was doing a lot of those tiny things, and I realized I had such a collective. Before the pandemic hit, I had been just hustling so hard, working in all the schools all the time, and then on top of that, running the courses. And I was becoming a registered children's yoga school so I could do my 95. And the whole thing was just compounding with, like, I realized I really needed something to give. And then the pandemic happened. And of course, my entire life changed, and it gave because I wasn't commuting, but I still, like, I didn't have that rest and recovery. And I realized those little things weren't enough. And I was having just so many signs from myself that I was sort of drowning, except for when I was teaching. Like, the only time I felt okay was like right when I hit record with my teacher training groups.
Yeah.
What's that about? So I've been trying to calm the village in ways that are comfortable for us. So we decided to incur a little bit of risk and to let my daughter spend time with her grandparents and my sister and my parents, like on both sides, both grandparents. And I told you last week, but I've decided I'm no longer going to work Fridays. I'm going to take Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and truly just cram everything into the first 4 days so that there is enough time to rest and recover. And sure, will I be emailing a little bit and things, but I know that if I want to put my best forward, I have to do that. And I have figured out more or less a way to make it possible, but it is very uncomfortable asking for help as people that are always the helpers. And then
it's frozen. You're frozen.
Okay, I'm gonna share it.
Text you. There you. Wait, I can't hear you.
Uh-oh. Oh, there you are. Okay, you froze for a second.
Yeah, you did too.
Okay.
There we go.
Yeah. So, I wanted to talk about like how we met and how we've become friends over the years. Do you remember the first time we met?
Well, I remember it was through Yogi Beans where I worked for a long time. You had just moved, right, from Massachusetts, I think, and you had your company. And I do remember our first meeting, and you did some like activity. You had like stones or something.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was basically toga with stones. You picked up the rocks with your feet, and every time we did, we said something about ourselves.
Yes. Yeah, and I totally remember that. Like after that meeting, I was like, "Oh my God, someone loves kids yoga as much as me!" Like I was like, she. I was so excited, and like you at that time, I needed like a boost, and so I remember that day very well.
Yeah, I remember that interview because that was a time in my life where I was trying to give up entrepreneurship and just work for someone else.
Yeah.
Because moving to a new place where it's such a relationship-based business, everything is based on who you know. And like, I was like, I'm just going to give this up and try to work for somebody else. And I realized so early on that even though I loved you guys, I loved when you were with Yogi Beans, I like loved what was happening there. The problem was like, I still had this vision, how I wanted to do things. And it was just a crippling problem because I also tried to work with other organizations that I like love and to this day highly respect. And at one point just could not do it. I realized like it's a blessing and a curse to be like, this is how I see things. But you and I both said like, we would never work for someone again. And we have so much love for everyone that we like met, our teachers and our past coworkers. What was the sign for you that you knew you had to work for yourself?
I think that's a good question. It was not like one thing. I think it was a buildup over years, probably, of starting to realize my value and that my voice mattered. I think that was what was holding me back for a long time because I was like, oh, I don't think I could go out on my own. Like I don't have enough knowledge or whatever the excuse was in my mind. But then when I became pregnant with my daughter, so she's 4.5, something in me like boom, it was like you need to like leave and figure out what you want. Something about having her growing inside of me, I suddenly became very protective of her, and then I had to be protective of me because I was carrying her. So that was the big change for me, where I decided, I've been thinking of this for so long, I think it's time to I just needed to create the space to figure out what is it exactly that I want to do? What do I want to say?
Yeah.
So, and that's the best decision I ever made. I was privileged, obviously, to be able to make that decision. My husband was working, so I was able to have the flexibility to leave and have a little lag. And I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, I would go to a movie by myself in the middle of
Remember walking around.
I would just walk. I would go to prenatal yoga and like get a brownie on the way home, and like I had all these things. And I'm so glad I did it. But that gave me space. And then I had my daughter, and I was home with her a while, and then it very authentically started. I was doing yoga with her, and I was like, what would I do? And I just
remember your social media starting to evolve at that time.
Yes.
Pictures of you guys, and you'd be doing like a warrior two, and she was like climbing on the walls. And then you started at the Gymboree. I remember you had like a really popular young toddler and parent program there, which anybody who's taken my Mindful Beginnings course knows that is the hardest time because there's mobility, a lack of readiness for like a true circle time. There's the wrangling. So I saw you doing that. I was like, oh my gosh, this is a skill. Actually, I should have had you as a guest for my next Mindful Beginnings. I'm going to have you come speak because
I love that. I love that age. I know how hard it is. I love it.
Hardest. Like I love the pre-mobile, like the new parent pre-crawling. I love like the 18-month and up, but that like 1 to 1.5, which I could see you just in these amazing pictures. And I realized like you had found something very special. And that I just have to say that is a skill set that I'm an early childhood expert. Like I have done 10,000 hours of early childhood classes alone. Plus I was a teacher before that, early childhood. It's like looking at you manage that. It's not just what you know, it's like who you are and how you operate.
Right.
And to be like able to handle all that chaos and smile and be sweet is, and I wasn't in the classes because of course you were Upper West Side and I was Brooklyn, but I'm like, wow, that was so special and really inspiring. And actually that was one of the pushes for me to create my Mindful Beginnings course, which is now part of my 95, because I saw like Jess is really doing this thing. And like, that's something I really care about too. So I wanted to tell you, like you were on my journey. And just to mention, I just saw a comment come in from Roman Spond, who was my mentor at Inner Strength Studios in Watertown. I took a 200-hour course there. And he says he remembers the moment that I realized I needed to be working for myself. And then he just commented that. So it's amazing to just, our teachers and all of my teachers have become my friends, and all of the people I thought were my competition have become my friends, because I realized like there's room for all of us. And that sense of like not knowing yourself is, I think, where the competition comes from. But then when you know yourself and you know your place in an industry or in a community, it's so much easier to just like pass the torch and share the love and like have these conversations where like I maybe 3 years ago would have been like, she's going to take eyes off me. But I realized that's not true, because you're in your lane and I'm in mine. And yes, there's crossover, but that's why we are friends.
Exactly. We have that in common, and we're both equally inspired about it. And like you said, we have there's a million things involved in kids yoga. There's so many routes to go, and
so many.
Everyone's going to have their own kind of special mixture. So if there's room for everybody.
So I know you did the Kids Yoga podcast. I've seen so many positive reviews. I've listened to some of the episodes. I've made friends with Sarah Casper, who actually just commented on our live stream. Hi, if you're watching. And, you know, a lot of the others just learning about activism and like all of these cool things, but you got there from somewhere so different. And when I was interviewed on your podcast, which is coming out tomorrow, so please,
interview number 2
tomorrow, you'll learn all about my Self-Care Saturday and 95-hour training. And today is all about us and Jessica. And how did you get from working with Yogi Beans to like knowing you wanted to do your own thing to then ending up creating a podcast, especially because I know you were planting the seeds before the pandemic, but then actually rolling something out with zero privacy in a New York City apartment, I have to say, kudos to you. Like the funniest part, just before you answer, is booking calls with you is always like, both of us are like, well, that's our bedtime. Like we have to either do bedtime or nap time. So it's just,
it's hard.
But it's so relatable. So like, I love doing and connecting with people who are in the thick of it with me.
Right.
So, thick of it sisterhood.
Yes. We need each other.
I
know. But so what was it? Oh, about how did I go from leaving to that? Well, let's see. So so we kind of touched on, so then I had my daughter, I started doing yoga with her. I have a background in editing videos. I went to a film program in Sedona, Arizona for a year, which was like incredible. And so I have that background.
Like skills then.
Yes. So I started doing videos with her because I thought it was hilarious. Like, I'm like, this is so funny what yoga looks like when you're with a baby. And I wanted to show what it was like real. So it was just on my personal page. And I started sharing those videos. And then I started seeing a gap kind of in the market of what we said. There was yoga when a baby's not mobile yet. And then there was toddler yoga, and there wasn't anything kind of in between when they just started walking and, you know, there's a bit of chaos. So my daughter was that age. It's like, oh, I could start classes like this. So I had been bringing her to Gymboree and became friends with the owner. And she was like, you can rent the room. And it just kind of turned into this thing. And I started this class. I started my company, Gem Yoga. It's my initials, JEM, but my daughter's Emily. So it's also kind of our names combined. And this class kind of took off. First of all, I also noticed there was a gap. There was no, now I don't even remember, it was Saturday or Sunday. Maybe I did Sundays. there was no Sunday morning classes, and I was on Kid Pass. So I was like, oh, there's 0 classes Sunday morning. So I offered it then, and so I started getting people every week, and I loved it because I found I was a new parent. These are all new parents. This isn't just for the babies. This is also for the parents to have community, because it can be very isolating as a new parent. I remember
So isolating.
I went to class with my daughter, and I would say she was 8 months old, and I'd see a 15-month-old, and I'd be like, oh, wow, look what they could do at that age. You know, I've taught for so long, I know, but just seeing like, oh, okay, that's our future. And talking to parents was vitally important. So then the class became storytime yoga, very loose structure. The whole floor was a yoga mat. I just covered the whole floor. I was like, they're not going to stay on the mat. Yeah.
And which would never work in COVID. Like, we would not even be able to have that.
That's true. I haven't even.
Timing is everything.
Like, totally. And I always started, if they're safe and happy, that's all I care about. They're going to wander the room. They're going to start looking at the shelf over there. Like, just let them be and let them come back on their own, because that's
exactly what I always say in my mindfulness classes. Like, they will get the structure with repetition. Yes. And like, go support if it's helpful. But if you just keep following, your kid's going to come back to you and follow.
The more you do, the more they do.
Most of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. How many or so? Like, if it's every Sunday and a kid's coming back each week with a parent, what do you think is the sweet spot when it like clicks? I know for some it's right away, but like usually I'm seeing like anywhere between 4 and 6 visits, and then
I was going to say 4 or 5.
Yeah, I always tell my trainees that, because they're like, oh, they were licking the walls. I'm like, don't worry, we'll just wash the wall and keep on
normal. Yeah. And it's more about your expectation as a teacher. Like, you need that experience teaching long enough where I wasn't in the beginning, you're like, oh my God, that was the worst class ever. Whereas the same class that I would teach now, it's like, that was incredible. There was that kid, she said one time, she made eye contact with me. She walked up to me to bring the singing bowl.
What did happen? Exactly.
Yes.
That is such a shift, because we have this sense as teachers early on that we have to control. And when we let go of controlling and just create a structure that is familiar and keep on being nice and sweet and inviting and offering and letting people know what they can do. But I think the other part is tempering expectations of parents and saying, this is going to be absolutely unique and wild, and it's very possible your kid will, or like, just letting them know that it's in the range of normal for a kid to either get it right away, to take 6 visits, and that just like they would with soccer or karate, give it time. And with yoga, did you find that people expected there to be like this instant normalcy? And you're like, it's not going to be like.
Yeah. But you know what it is for me? It's giving the parents permission to relax. No one's judging them. I'm not judging you. Like, being very clear, we're not judging you if your child's running around screaming and runs and dives on my lap. Like, that's all normal. If there's the big thing, they're safe and happy. That's all I care about. So I would see like a kind of that feeling, because sometimes it's not only about your child, it's also about you.
When it's a structure to let go of trying to make your kid anything.
Right. So
together,
the energy of yoga, it needs to be, the energy of yoga permeates the room so that everyone feels accepted and seen. So something simple, like when a parent entered the room, hi, what's your name first, then what's the child's name? So, because I also had experience, not only have I taught for so long, bringing my daughter to classes and feeling like I was invisible, that it was, which is fine. Those are different kinds of classes, but like the adults are not really acknowledged, and it's about the kids, which is fine. But for this class, I wanted adults to feel like they were just as much a part of it. And also be clear, they're not going to get in a workout. So it's like, that expectation sometimes. Oh, am I going to get in? Like, it's like, you're going to do down dog. You're going to do some poses. You're not going to do a vinyasa flow, but you'll move for sure.
Right. Well, and actually I was talking to one of my teacher trainees in the summer, is also a Brooklyn resident. So she and I went to the same postnatal, like new baby yoga class. And it was so rigorous, and like ignored the babies completely. It was just a place where you could go with a floppy belly, and they normalized a lot, but it was so focused on like getting your form back. And I was like,
Right.
So for me, it was really like, and that's how my parent and baby classes were like that too, where it was a place to come as a sanctuary to welcome you,
Mm-hmm.
normalize your situation, to make sure that everyone knows the grass isn't greener, no matter who you are and what's happening in your life. Everyone's going through a transition. There's mourning involved in becoming a parent. And
Mm-hmm.
then because your old identity died, the community you were making is so important for those people, because now they have others in the same situation, whereas a lot of your friends might be on different timelines from your past life, from your
Right.
pre-parenting life. So how do you build a ladder out of the like pit of isolation? I
Mm-hmm.
think programs like your Gymboree. So how long did you do the Gymboree class for?
Um, I want to say a year and a half, 2 years.
And then you got pregnant with
Then
Ryan,
I
right?
got pregnant with Ryan. So
Yeah,
apparently the theme is I get pregnant and something shifts
everything
in me. So
changed.
I was like, you know what? I need to take care of my body. I'm chasing a toddler all day and I'm pregnant. And when you're teaching the yoga I was teaching, up and down off the floor, up and down, jumping, insane. So I forget, maybe I was like 20 weeks or something. And I said, I'm going to just like stop this class for now. And again, figure it out. And I I just focused on, I just wanted to that year focus on transitioning from a family of 3 to a family of 4. And I was very focused on, my daughter had been breech. So I was like very focused on like taking care of my body so my son could be in the right position. I was very much in that. And then the first year is just absolute insanity of the adjustment. But then once he was getting closer to a year, I started thinking again. And I had been thinking of this podcast idea for years because I love podcasts. And I was constantly searching kids yoga podcast. And I'd look, and there are a few, but nothing like what I was envisioning. And when 2020 began, before we knew what would happen, I said, I'm doing it. I'm going to start the podcast. I talked to my brother. He encouraged me. He sent me a microphone. He's like,
Oh, that's so sweet.
yeah, I have my mic right here. And that I was like, well, now I have this fancy mic. I've got to do it. So I was like, I'm going to do it. And I started journaling about it. And I realized I had like 200 episode ideas. I was like, oh, me just personally, I could talk about this for years. And then I thought, oh, I want to interview people. And so I reached out to you, people that I knew already kind of within the industry.
Yeah, I noticed your early episodes were like the insular community of people you knew. And then
yes.
as it started to expand out and out, sure, everybody knows others. They're like, hey, this would be a great
exactly.
Yes. And that's like such a cool way to organically grow your community.
Yes.
And like create this like family feeling throughout the because it was very competitive 5 years ago, and I want it to be, and I'm sure you feel this way, a family.
And that's one of the big reasons I started it, was because I feel very strongly that competition there's no place for that in kids yoga. I'm not interested in that. I think that by sharing our knowledge, we help each other grow, we reach more children, and I think we all become better teachers by sharing our knowledge. So that was another reason I started it. And then the pandemic started. So I was like, all right, when am I recording? And of course it was like, okay, I guess at night after my daughter goes to bed. Well, apparently now she's a night owl. Now she's not asleep until 10. It's just been getting shifting.
Exhausting them at school. So
exactly.
My daughter's bedtime was getting later and later too. But the other night when we were supposed to talk at 8:30, I was panicking. I was like, is she gonna be in bed? So I just said, go in your room. And if you're not sleeping, that's okay.
Right, exactly. Like just go in your room by yourself.
Having that healthy alone time though, like do you send her off to be in her room, or how do you handle that?
So I wish my daughter could do that. My son is in her room, so they share a room. So it kind of complicates things.
Yeah.
And I also
New York City living.
Yeah, it's New York City living. It's a tiny room. So she kind of knows she has all this power at night. She knows like I could wake him up if I go in. So it became a power struggle. And just last night I was like, I accept that like Emily she's not going to go to sleep until 10. So what can I do? So she wanted to play with her kinetic sand. I'm like, go for it. I'm like, mommy's done playing tonight, but you can play. So like, I'm still setting up things for her, helping her, but I'm taking my time, which is limited. And I'm just accepting that that's what it is right now. It won't be like that forever, but definitely that's been a challenge. So recording, luckily I have this space. My stepsister has not been home and she lives in my building.
Oh my gosh, that's
It's
amazing.
like, yeah, I go in the elevator, come
Your
upstairs.
husband can just deal with her while you record.
Exactly. So right now she's watching something, my husband's working and my son's napping. So when this space opened up, and my stepsister was generous and offered it right at the beginning, but I felt weird about it and I didn't expect the pandemic to go on
Right.
as long as it did. Eventually I said, I kind of need it.
And yeah, I would like do my personal practice there.
Exactly. That's what I get quiet here. I record, whenever I can. So that's been a game changer for sure. And now I've released episodes every week since it started somehow.
Yeah, every Thursday.
Yeah.
Plug the Kids Yoga podcast, new episodes released every Thursday. Amazing people in the pipeline. And I know I'm in the next episode talking about
tomorrow
Saturday and like the new business model for Kids Yoga online, which was a really cool thing to have a discussion about, just because when the pandemic started, my entire business model was different. And it's so interesting to have the vantage point I do, because I'm training new people and seeing the work opportunities they have and how it does not reflect the old opportunities people had in Kids Yoga. The bread and butter has changed. And so it's really interesting from my vantage point, seeing what everyone's up to, because I feel really blessed to see all the opportunities coming up for different people in different places, to understand that there is still a wide variety of work available in the field. It's just that we have to be creative and not rely on the old paradigms. And whenever people talk about in an industry being disrupted, this is our Kids Yoga industry is disrupted. So we have to for me, I got an opportunity to have my organization work at a live summer camp in New Jersey, and I didn't feel comfortable yet. And I actually referred that out to a dear friend and colleague of mine. And now because her programs were just like everyone else's, demolished. And she was so grateful for someone to she said, in 16 years, no one's ever referred me business. And I'm like,
wow.
It's something I'm not comfortable with. And I know that she's pursuing that kind of thing. I want to share. I want to be a resource also to the people reaching out to me saying, hey, can you do this? And if I say no, I know dozens of people who are qualified. And and if I didn't, I could say, Jessica, who do you know?
Right, exactly.
Things about our industry. And I think creating this feeling of family, that's actually why I did the Self-Care Saturday thing, because Self-Care Saturday is something I'm starting in September. For those who are listening, it's a free weekly email that leads you to a blog entry on a different topic with a video on how to do a mindfulness or breathing activity or movement activity, to give structural places for you to take care of yourself, with whether you are with your kids or not, or a teacher or parent. It's really my from my heart, big offering that I want everyone to have access to. And when I talked to my trainees that were so sad, the summer trainees were just, usually people start the training and they're so excited and they were so sad. And it's because they didn't know what was coming and they had nothing to hold on to. And they, just like you and me, had lost the structure of what it looks like to take care of themselves. And our kids are going through that too, because they no longer have, Emmy no longer has school. My daughter no longer has school. We're not sending her back either. So how do we build in structural care? And we can try on all these different things. I wanted to reach out to our whole community, and I'm really hoping everybody signs up for it, because it's a lot of work. I'd rather 1,000 people or 10,000 people have access than 80 or something. So please do share. But I think about how you and I are over this competition. I want every Kids Yoga business that wants to follow it too. I don't care if you mimic the things I'm doing that work in your space too. Mimicking your teachers is a really great way to learn. My teacher training students are always like, hey, is it okay if I do this thing we learn in our training? I'm like, of course. They're like, hey, can I change it and adapt it? It's like, of course. So I think when we do talk to different people, we see how everyone's doing things differently, and we can all learn and adapt from that. And that's why it's so cool to have their voices.
Here's the thing. So when you start out, and I used to have that mindset, when you start out like this, clenched, oh, I've got all this knowledge, I'm not going to share because I don't want anyone to steal it. So you're holding yourself back, because you're not letting out, you're like this. So once you let that go, you start to realize that, yes, everyone can do the kids yoga podcast, for example, but are they going to? It takes a lot of work. So so same thing for your kids classes. Like everyone can teach teen yoga, but are they going to put in the work? Do they want to put in the work? Do they enjoy that age? Are they coming from an authentic place? That's what's important. So we all have our own thing, and it takes work too. So I don't think everyone's going to put in the same amount of work.
It takes work, and it's also like when you stay in your lane and do what you're built for and trained for, it's so much better than taking on all of the jobs you're offering.
Yes.
And I used to do this. I used to do like, I really don't love to work in middle schools. I just don't. I don't really click as well. Elementary and early childhood and top of high school are my like sweet spots. And then of course teachers. But if someone is like, hey, do you want to come in and work with middle schoolers for 4 hours a day all year? I could do it to make a living, but would I find somebody better for that and say, I know this really great person. I actually trained her myself. I trust her with my heart. I trust her with my own kid. Like, and I think that that's the spirit, is like figuring out. And then when people find out how much work actually goes into what we do, like someone could think they could emulate my teacher training or my Self-Care Saturday, but then when you actually, every single post has a newsletter and a blog and a video and a social media post and an image and like all of the things. And then there's 12 of those. And it's like, and for your podcast, you have to set up the meeting, do all the pre-emailing and then like and then do the editing and then release it and then promote it before and after. And like, I know you do like the picture of the little kid and then the current, the whole thing. And I think it's just really something when people find out how much work goes into.
Totally.
And that's why I think shadowing is such a cool practice, when somebody is shadowing you and they're like, wow, you make it look so easy. And then they actually look at the process and it's like, oh, this is not easy.
Exactly. No, that's the thing. Like, I want there to be more kids yoga podcasts. There are some out there. Like, I've been actually thinking, like, I'd be happy to mentor someone that has been wanting to start it, kind of like I was, and is like, so what do you do? Like, I would be happy to kind of forge that path, because there's so many ways we can get yoga to kids, and it's teacher trainings and it's virtual classes and it's getting yoga in schools and it's podcasts and it's video. So I just am all about just like, getting it out there to every single kid so they have access to it.
Same. And that was my business model at first, was like try to teach every child in the Massachusetts area when I used to live there. And I was burning out so hard. And I remembered not to do that and to like balance between mentorship and teaching teachers and teaching enough student groups to like feel like I'm still really connected. And then last year and the year before, I fell back into taking up all the opportunities and teaching, and it just sucked my life force because I gave too much. And the second that was taken from me from COVID, I would realize I can focus on the thing that I actually feel is my calling, which is to, like you're saying, like light it up for everyone else that is working with all the kids. I've got people in Wyoming, like Delaware, like all over the world. I can actually facilitate their reaching out to kids, and like they're going to reach out to their own students or children way better than I ever could, right? Because the relationship building has to be primary. It's like the first thing you do is build a relationship. So can I build a relationship with 1 million people and have it be meaningful? Definitely not. But I absolutely think if I trained 1,000 teachers in my lifetime, I'm already up to 300, they will reach 1 million. And then I'm like, okay, I have officially passed the torch and done this thing, and it feels really satisfying, but it's so hard. And I don't know if you have this problem too, like to satiate that urge to put out and create and give and nurture. I think Santosha contentment would really help me here. Like mindfulness, the quality of okayness, where ambition is like this energy suck, but it also provides energy because I'm excited about the possibilities. Any advice on like managing trying to do too much?
That's, you know what? I just feel like I'm forced to not do too much because of my 2 kids and being home with them full time. I literally can't, and I have a very limited amount of time, and I am blessed to have that kind of flexibility. The podcast, I need to get it done every week, but it's on my timeline of
Right,
that
like you
week.
would record it 2 or 3 weeks in advance.
I could, yeah, like I already have a bunch recorded, and I'm figuring that out. I feel like it just comes back to that self-reflection and finding those quiet moments. Doesn't have to be a meditation practice, doesn't have to be a yoga practice, but whatever it is that you do when you get in that state where you're kind of, the time is gone, whatever it is that you do, if it's listening to music, if it's going for a walk, and allowing yourself to kind of settle back into your body. Because I find I'm not in my body most of the day lately because, right, I think we're in fight or flight like all the time. So,
and like caffeine use during pandemic to survive parenting, I think is the likelihood you'll be in that sympathetic, like not
exactly. So it's the yoga, it's returning to your breath, and even just I do like counting breaths during the day, and just because it's so cheesy, but it's all inside. When you can get back to yourself, it always becomes very clear. Journaling is another great one, to just sit and say, even before we talk, whenever I have an interview, I'm like, okay, what's my intention for this? And I just like, I write down a few words, and then I feel grounded, instead of I'm like this all day, like, I need get this, and panic and get this. So it's hard. That Santosha, my husband's grandfather, he's 93, and he is just the embodiment of Santosha. Whenever we're with him, I'm just amazed by him and how happy he is. And if there's even someone in your life like that, I kind of call him back in my mind a lot, and I'm like, I just think of his essence, and it reminds me that it's not about all the things. It's like finding that he's happy having his coffee, and then he's happy. He does his exercises every day. Yeah, little things. It doesn't have to be complicated.
My sister like loves to just laugh and dance and like do things like that. And I was with her, she's like, "You're so serious." Like, and I realize it's because I am in a constant state of fight or flight, and I don't have time and space for myself. So when I was thinking about like promoting this whole Self-Care Saturday thing, what a fraud I felt like, because I truly like those little breaks and those little moments weren't doing enough to return my nervous system to a balanced place. And looking out and being like, what would I need? And in my family, they're always saying, just like ask for what you need, which I'm terrible at. So I started to do that, and I already feel a change, like shortening my work week, making more like just tangible lists of exactly what to do. I have people on my team to help me literally make a task list, because things like that overwhelm me. And then
me too.
Yeah. So I've been like, it does cost money to get like help with business, but at the same time, I'd rather like live more humbly and like still do things to my standard. But now I'm also like, okay, and I need this extra time where I'm either just with my family, or can I take a walk? Or sometimes I have a rooftop. So it's like,
oh, that's nice.
I just leave my family inside after my daughter goes to bed and go up and just sit outside and look at the moon, because I feel that like when I'm disconnected from nature, I become in this constant state of seriousness and worry. And I look for all the problems, and I'm very much in that mental place now where when I'm not doing something like this, as soon as I'm done connecting and like, or if I'm teaching, I feel great. And as soon as it's done, I can feel myself scanning for problems. I can feel myself scanning for threats. And it is one of these things that like, I have had gratitude practices, I've had journaling practices that I know if I did those, it'd be so helpful. But I realized I needed to, before I could do those little things again, I needed to make structural change to my life, because I could not go on another week living that way. Just look like, okay, I'm working, and now I'm parenting, and now I'm cleaning, and so letting things be imperfect is very hard for me. I didn't realize that, because as a student in college, like I was like straight A, obsessively studying. I had never been like that earlier because I was just very bright. I didn't realize that it was because I had very, very high standards for myself. I think sometimes when we have that perfection standard, we are actually in a way having a superiority complex. Because if I'm not living up to this, I'm not good enough. And that means right now I am the best or something. So it's like this weird place. So by feeling like I'm not good enough, I also think conversely, like, am I the best? And I don't want that either. I just want to know I'm being myself and I'm taking my own medicine. So when I ask people, like whenever I do my Foundations of Kids Yoga course, before we talk about any kids yoga, it's always about like, what is your personal practice? What does it look like? And does that reflect who you are right now? Or do you need to explore some other routes of like care? And I have yet to like go back down that rabbit hole for myself. And I know I need to take my own medicine. So I'm really excited to just keep in touch and talk to you about like how we manage parenting and working and being home in New York without our normal like structures, like school. Like who would have thought we wouldn't be sending our kids back to school? I don't want to send my daughter back either. I don't want her to be looking at teachers with a face covering, because it's very confusing. We get a lot of information from here down.
Yeah.
And I think social emotional development requires that connection. And they're not even allowed to share toys. So what is she going to get from that? It's like, don't touch this, don't touch that. She's going to get more anxious and more worried. So it's like, how do we then create the community we need? And I think it's like continuing to be creative and to just keep, like you said, she talks to her babysitter. It might not be in person, but it's something for her, and it's someone she loves. And so like, I want to keep pulling those people in and being around them. Okay, so before we end, I want to, obviously you have the Kids Yoga podcast, but if there's anything you want to plug, how can people find you? If someone wants to reach out to you, how should they do that, etc.?
Yeah, so the Kids Yoga podcast, Instagram is my favorite, so you can follow the Kids Yoga podcast there. You can email me, thekidsyogapodcast@gmail.com. I have a web designer that we're talking to, so soon to have a website, the Kids Yoga Podcast. So I've got the domain, but that should be up soon. And I'd love if people could subscribe to the podcast. So if you listen on Apple or Spotify, subscribe. And if you enjoy an episode, listen to Lara's first episode, episode 6, and then listen to her tomorrow. And then if you enjoy, if you leave a rating and review, it just does wonders with just kind of bumping the algorithm so people find it. So reach out to me. You could DM me. I just love hearing from people and hearing your thoughts. And I just appreciate it. Thank you for doing this. It was so fun.
Yeah, it's so fun. And just my shameless plug, Self-Care Saturday, there's a link in the comments. Everybody that is a parent or teacher, just sign up for it. It's freebie. And I'm doing this from my heart for you. And it's got meditations and breathing exercises. All of them come with posters and coloring sheets and videos. It's like no brainer, so easy to do. And share this with your friends that are teachers and parents and pediatric clinicians, anyone who loves and works with kids. The other plug is I am a registered children's yoga school. So if you want to sign up, I'm doing live online courses. The spring and summer cohorts have been absolutely incredible. It's a place to build community and to build your career. And we really do learn how to pivot for this new normal, which is like, how do you actually film? How do you be in front of a camera? So you might not be ever doing things how we did them. So as the industry is evolving, it's a perfect time to come in and take a training. I would love to have you for any module or the whole 95. Thank you for coming today, Jessica.
Yes,
and I'm really looking forward to the episode coming out, and my team will promote that, and
great.
We'll talk. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Bye,
Bye, everyone. Thank you for tuning in.